My mother-in-law stole my daughter's journal. Throw away for privacy. My ex-wife and I got divorced 3 years ago. I've been married to my current wife for over a year now. My 13-year-old daughter lives with us, but she spends time with her mom every week. My daughter never really accepted the fact that her mother and I went our separate ways. She's clearly still struggling to deal with what happened, and she hasn't been fully open to her stepmom yet. Her stepmom knows and respects her wishes and gives her the time and space she needs. My unbelievably, unbearable, self-centered mother-in-law does not like me at all. In fact, she hated that her daughter got married to a single dad and would constantly go out of her way to try to belittle me in front of her whole family. I've been low contact in the past few weeks. I no longer visit. My wife visits alone, but sometimes I have to let mother-in-law come over to visit my wife, and every time she tries to start an argument, but I just avoid her and try to suck it up for a couple of hours till she's left. A couple of days ago, she showed up. I told her my wife wasn't home, but she insisted on waiting for her in the living room while I went back to working on our fence. My daughter was in the bathroom taking a shower at the time. She's had just got back from her friend's house. In about 10 minutes my wife arrived and went to sit with her mom. Her mom decided to leave after spending only 5 minutes talking to my wife. I thought that was odd. She never leaves in less than at least 2 hours. My daughter spent an hour watching TV, then she went to her bedroom. I heard some noise and my daughter came out running telling me that her journal was gone. At first I thought, maybe she could have left at her friend's house. She said no, it was there when got back and before she went to the bathroom. She was telling me this while crying. This is definitely a big deal for my daughter. Her journal is her private space. This is where she writes down what's on her mind and vents and just kind of get it all out without having to worry about being judged. I myself used to have a journal that I still keep from when my dad passed away 7 years ago. It helped me during my grief and dark times. It occurred to me that my mother-in-law took it because my daughter was in the bathroom while I was out fixing the fence, so yeah, it made perfect sense. She took it. My wife decided to call her mom to ask her about and she denied, but I didn't buy into it. I decided to call her myself and what she told me was a shock. She said she was at my daughter's room, came across the journal and read some horrible things that my daughter said about her daughter. She said was worried with what she read in the first couple of pages, so she decided to put the journal in her bag and go home so she could read it comfortably. She then said that what my daughter said was unacceptable and inappropriate, and that this girl needs to learn some manners. I told her that's private stuff, and what she did was a massive invasion of my daughter's privacy. She got all defensive and started berating me for what my daughter wrote in her journal. I was absolutely enraged. I went to her house to take back the journal. She saw this as a chance for an argument. I just took the journal and went home. When my daughter knew, she blew up in my face because she was so upset with this woman did. She stayed in her room refusing to talk to me. She thinks I'm somehow the reason this happened. I've apologized more than I could remember. I tried to sit down and talk to her because I was worried about her. She took this the wrong way and said, "I'm sorry. I didn't know she was going to invade my room and peruse my journal like this. Had you informed me, I would have lied in my journal and simply would have written some good things that probably never really happened and feelings I've never really experienced that hit me." She thinks I had something to do with my mother-in-law being incredibly rude and stealing personal stuff from our house and get away with it. My daughter literally hates me and says she no longer trusts me. I'm at the end of my rope and don't know how to handle this mess. Miller's a sociopath. Big read. Strange issue to most, I think, so a lot of backstory is needed. Definitely not boring though. Lol, my monogamous marriage is the product of a polyamorous marriage and my mill has made our lives a living hell since day one. Basically, my husband was married and he and his then wife had an agreement that they could date other people, keeping the outside intimacies away from the marriage itself. Except he wasn't allowed to. Everything was a double standard. She would pick out girls he was allowed to talk to, knowing they were too flaky to be worth anything real, developing, all the while, sleeping with multiple people every week. And get this, when she came home from a date with a rando and the sex wasn't good, she would wake husband up and make him finish the job. You can't make this shit up. In fact, Just before he and I met, she called him pathetic for not having a girlfriend because she was juggling 3 dudes at the time. He needed to get out there because he was too needy. Which is when he found me. When he and I started getting to know each other, he told me he was married but allowed to date. I told him I wanted to talk to his wife to verify or we couldn't continue seeing each other. So I spoke to her several times via text and on the phone, and was assured he was telling the truth and that deep feelings were welcome because that was the point. I agreed to see what would happen, because he was the most incredible human I'd ever met. You just don't meet men like him every day. That's not a thing. Smart, hilarious, kind, chivalrous, handsome as all hell. Anyway, fast forward about a month, and the two of them invite me and my kids to their house for Thanksgiving. We lived 2 hours away at the time, but had no other plans, so of course we went. We laughed and cooked. My kids got along really well with theirs. Everyone had a great time. This was around the time I found out that his parents didn't know about their arrangement, or that I even existed. Because I hadn't spoken in great detail with the wife before meeting her, not much more than the above was discussed prior. That evening is when she told me that she had a plan for telling them, just not yet. Fast forward to Christmas. My kids and I are coming to visit my boyfriend and his family. Wife tells me to come to their house and wait for them to do Christmas with his family. She still hadn't told them and didn't want her kids to tell the family because they would be excited to see us, causing them to bring it up at their function. Cool. No biggie. So we get there and when they get back and we get the kids to bed, we all have a few drinks and wife starts going on about how wonderful I am for husband's mental and physical health. Depression due to lifetime of being thought of as a dick with a paycheck caused him to become anorexic. She said that if anything ever happened to her, she would want me to take care of her kids with husband as my own because of how much they love me, and that his family was evil, so that wasn't an option. Showed me where all their important documents were in case it was pretty bizarre. I have to throw in here that when we met, he and I would get together at night because I work nights and we would see each other when we were both off the next day, so we tried for every Sunday night. So talking and texting constantly, and seeing each other every week for 2 months, there was a lot of bonding going on. At first everything was okay. But at Christmas, she saw that we actually had feelings, and when he and so had it in a date a few days later, the shit hit the fan. She tried to pull the wife card, her words, not mine, and squash everything. Problem is we were already in love. He wasn't going to let it happen. When so tell you this woman lost her marbles. Called husband's family and told them that she checked the bank account and saw that he had dinner, and the amount that was spent was definitely on more than just him. She told them that he was cheating on her, and he had been 4 months and she had known about it for a while but didn't want to ruin anyone's holidays by bringing it up, and of course, the family devoured her lies and kicked husband around. Threats of violence, and kicking my husband out of his own house for doing her wrong. Which brings me to the monster-in-law. She texted me that night stating that she was Mill and that I was not to come back or she would have me removed. I responded very respectfully considering I was sitting in a church parking lot a few miles from his house sobbing like an infant into his work shirt I kept in my car because it smelled like him. I apologized for any grief that I may have caused the family, told her that since I met husband, I have wanted to shake his parents' hands for raising the most upstanding and respectable human I have ever met, that it was a shame our first and last conversation had to be like this, or something of that nature. This is when all the fun started. Mill and Phil more or less disowned husband for being a bastard, even when he tried to tell her the truth. Even with her history of promiscuity. Even with his history of being loyal to a fault. Naturally things intensified in husband's home from that night and she said to break up with me or divorce her. He said he wasn't going to do either. Long story short, they both filed for a dissolution of marriage. Mill and Sills coached her on how to get the most out husband in court, which worked. Phil has threatened violence to husband and to shoot our dogs numerous times. Both Mill and Phil have posted countless posts about me, husband, my kids, how they will make sure my stepkids hate me just like all the adults do. How I was a master manipulator and a home wrecker. A gold digger. That was my favorite. Then please, by all means, point me in the direction of my gold. I must have misplaced it. She threatened to take my husband's property, which was in both Mill and husband's name at the time, and kick everyone out on the street. Hubs told her to try it. She didn't. Actually ended up signing it over to him outright and basically tell him to duck himself. Posting publicly on Facebook with my full name and maiden name these insane accusations about me being a bad mother, abusing my kids bullying theirs, none of which happened, mind you. Posted photos of our home, my car, my license plate, my YouTube videos of me hula hooping during my weight loss documentation, making fun of my weight like a child. She has met me 2 times in 2 years, both. Maybe hours time tops. Started calling last year and talking to husband every week or so. Then a few times a week, then every day or so. None of which I minded. See, I was still in the stage of denial. The one where she would wake up one day a woman and not a demon spawned from Satan's vomit, only uglier, with an epiphany that husband and I had been telling the truth, and of course wife would lie because she lies every time her lips move. Hell, wife and Mill fought for over a decade over her lying, but suddenly she's a saint? Anyway, got off track there. I still hoped she would see everything the way it actually happened. So I didn't mind that she called. She never really apologized for the way she acted in the beginning but started telling husband to tell me things like be careful if you go out today because blah blah whatever. Then she asked to talk to me, not about anything important, just about this store in town. Told husband that she wasn't speaking to wife. That they had a falling out. Then she invited us over to their house for Father's Day. I wasn't sure, but husband convinced me all would be fine. We had his kids that weekend so when we got there, we were pretty shocked to see wife's car. Husband held my hand and in we went. Us and 5 kids into a societal fighting pit. My kids were oblivious of course because we don't talk about stuff in front of them and they are fairly young. They played and had a good time. There was a disagreement between one of my kids and one of husband's nieces. Nothing major, everyone was really nice and friendly. The women's table was weird to me. They kept trying to get me to come and sit next to wife and neither one of us were there yet. Wasn't gonna happen. It was funny to them though. They were trying to make me uncomfortable. At one point, Mill walked up to me and stuck her armpit against my nose and told me to smell her deodorant. My sil licked my husband on his face while she looked me dead in the eye. I swear I couldn't make it up if I tried. Instead of showing my ass like they wanted, I sat there and had coffee with Phil while husband played games with Bill and kids. I felt like my skin was crawling the whole time because I knew they were trying to piss us off. So did husband. Instead of letting them win, he ripped his shirt off and exposed the tattoo of my name he had put over his heart. The family all kind of backed off then. When it was over, we all said our nice to meet yous and whatnot and we left. Husband and I were pretty excited that nothing awful happened, so we took it as a win. A few days later, his sister posts something people need to keep their kids on leashes and savage little monsters this and that. We were like who TF is she fighting with? Then Mill calls the house and husband answers. She starts having him question my kid, asking him if he called another party goer names and flipped them the bird. Kid says no. Clear to me he wasn't lying. She keeps telling him to ask this, ask that. I'm ducking livid at this point and I yell out that if she wants to talk to someone talk to me. Husband hands me the phone. She's screaming before I even get it to my head. Couldn't even decipher what she was saying. I do know she called me a hillbilly homewrecker though. So that was nice. All of this began the avalanche of bullshit from Mill. Like I said earlier. All the slanderous posts. I can't get a job in my neighborhood because that's how deep she has run my name in the dirt. Broke my foot recently. Posted a picture of my kid sitting on the couch and you can see my cast. It was actually about my cast and only needing it for a few weeks. A few days after posting that, I sent my oldest to live with his dad because of pubescent defiance and severe ADHD not working well with my weakened mental state. This B stalked my Facebook from a fake account, took a screenshot of my post, claimed that my husband gave me an ultimatum that my son moves or we all move, that I sent him away to save my marriage, that he deserves a better life. She might have spent an hour around him in total. We don't even talk to them. We don't talk to anyone. We live on a farm, we take care of the land. The house, the kids, the marriage. We don't socialize. IDK where they come up with this garbage. We've tried to reach out to lawyers for defamation, slander, libel, and the retainers are outrageous. The police say it's freedom of speech. IDK what to do about it? Seems like there are a lot of people who have done the mill thing before but not me, and mine is a frigging doozy. Mill has been feeding So food he is Anaphylaxis highly allergic to for 22 years. He always gets sick after eating and thought it was normal. So my So is highly allergic to dairy, specifically milk proteins. Allergic to the point that he breaks out in hives, throat swells up, can quickly kill him. Don't confuse it with being lactose intolerant like most. I didn't know you could be allergic to milk. I thought he was lactose intolerant at first, but I want to stress he is highly deathly allergic, just like people with peanut allergies. I started to notice over the past 3 years that he gets sick almost constantly every time he eats something she has cooked. And lately I have noticed that a lot of the things she is putting in his dinner has dairy in it. Now you may not realize this, but stuff like any shiny veggies like apples, cucumber, and although they aren't shiny, potatoes, have a coating called casein, which contains milk protein. Most meat you buy at your regular grocery store also has casein or other milk protein for flavor enhancement. Lactic acid normally doesn't have milk proteins, but they usually do if it's from a cheaper company, because it's made out of veggies and cheaper companies tend to use old produce to make it, therefore using veggies that contain casein in it. I've known this for the past 3 years, and have seen her use things that I know contain some sort of milk ingredients that don't directly say milk. However, I assumed she was buying organic straight from a butcher and milk-free options, which are typically hard to find but possible. But then I recently noticed that So constantly complains about feeling sick after eating and is sometimes worried that he may have some sort of cancer because he has a lot of digestive issues. Then I eventually realized JNMIL is actually feeding him dairy versions of all these foods. 2 nights ago she fed him a rice dish with dairy peppers and cucumbers and he felt ill. Tonight she made sausages. The casing and the ingredient they use to bind the meat together are both dairy, and they made him extremely sick because sausages have 2 things in it that contain dairy. We're also pretty sure that the baby formula she fed him as a baby was also dairy. I have no idea how he is not dead, and it has probably caused him lifelong digestive issues, as he always has some sort of digestive issue going on, and I guarantee it's related. He's mentioned it to her and she's making it seem like it's not a big deal by saying, "Oh, I didn't think casein was dairy. Those don't have dairy etc." when they in fact do contain dairy. I find he's also not taking it as seriously as he should, and is just letting her get away with it. I really don't know how he isn't dead or more ill. The past few months I've been pointing it out. There's been maybe 2 dinners at most where it was fully dairy free, and that's being generous by saying 2. Also his parents are split and he never gets sick when his dad makes food, so I know for a fact it's her feeding him dairy that's causing him to constantly be sick, not something else. Poor thing thought it was normal to be sick after eating.